In the early 13th century, changing Europe had to experience new shocks. The first Slavonic state, Kievan Russia, was changing. The last head of the united Kievan Russia state, Vladimir Monomakh, died in 1125. His son Mstislav was in no position to rule the Slavs scattered in the vast territories of the Slavonic state, which split into independent duchies. Haličo-Voluinės, Pinsko-Turovo, Polocko duchies and the Great Novgorod became our neighbors. Genghis Khan's grandson, Bati, devastated Kiev in 1240. Russia became a tributary of the Golden Horde. At the beginning of the 12th century, the Polish kingdom too failed to escape the split of a state, as a statute of Boleslav III made separate Polish duchies lawful. It was Prussian lands by the Vistula that became the bone of contention for the Mozūrian duchy and us, the Balts. The idea of crusades matured in the heads of the rulers of Western European Christian lands. 8 crusades attempted between 1098 and 1270 were all a complete failure. The coffin of Christ was not reclaimed, and the hopes of the young offspring of nobility to take hold of new domains in the lands of unbaptized Arabs dwindled away. Our lands, those of Eastern Baltic pagan Balts and Finno-Ugrian Daugava-Livians, attracted their attention. The time of vital decisions and decisive combats for the last pagan nations approached. As far as I can remember, the first stronghold of the Baltic Crusade was the Daugava-Livians. In 1180, a canon of the Augustinian order, Meinhard, visited them. In 1185, the first church was built in Ixkile, and in the next year he was consecrated bishop by the Pope. When he died in 1196, the issues of the crusade were taken over by Albert. In the company of numerous crusaders, he entered the Daugava estuary, built a castle, and established the town of Riga. Already in 1208, the Sword-Bearers' Order, which was established in 1202, organized an unsuccessful march to Lithuania. The following year, the Latgalian castles of Aizkraukle, Kuoknese, and Jersika were defeated, and by the year 1212, Albert conquered Livian lands. Assisted by the Danes, the order also enslaved northern Estonians. Elated by the victories and instigated by the crusade to Lithuania, which was launched by Gregory IX in 1236, they attempted to take over Samogitian and Semigalian lands by force. In the same year, Master Volkewin and his whole order were defeated in the Sun or Saulen battle. For some time they kept quiet, and the frightened Pope incorporated them with the Vistula Crusaders. I shall relate to you a tragic and cautionary tale about the establishment of a southern forepost of crusades in the Prussian Kulm land. The forerunner of the Teutonic Order was set up in a cone already in 1190 during the Third Crusade to Palestine. The Pope Innocent III granted that fraternity the rights of military monkhood, and 8 years later restructured it into an independent order of knights, subordinate to the Pope and to the Holy Roman Emperor. In 1211, the Hungarian king Andrew II invited the Teutonic Order to defend his lands from the Polovets nomads. Before long, the order tried to create its own state in Hungary. It started minting money and expanding its holdings. In 1225, the Hungarian king, Andrew II, put the order out and invited Joannites to protect the state borders. Mozūrian Duke Conrad I was in need of an alien power to combat the Prussians, who refused to come to terms with the occupation of Kulm. The Grand Master of the order, who was invited for talks and who had learned the Hungarian lesson well, was in no hurry to arrive. After negotiations conducted between 1226 and 1230, he achieved that according to the feudal law of that time, the order should be conceded the major part of Kulm land and a permit to rule the defeated lands of Prussians and Lithuanians. In 1234, the agreements of Conrad I and Hermann von Salz were approved by Pope Gregory IX, and at some later date by the emperors of the Holy Roman Empire Friedrich II and Ludwig IV. In 1230, the first cohorts of the order moved to the Kulmas land. Thus, the Poles themselves were conducive to the establishment of a German state by the Vistula, which for 2 centuries blocked our life. The irony of fate is that 200 years later the Polish king of Lithuanian descent Jogaila and the Grand Duke of Lithuania Vytautas destroyed the same predator, which had been brought into the country by the Poles themselves and nurtured by the European Christians. We brought enormous shame on ourselves in the battles for the Prussian lands. We were rendered completely helpless in the eyes of the Teutonic Order when our noblemen were proposed the rights and privileges of new colonists. Only 19 years passed after the first Teutonic knight set his foot on the Kulm territory, and on the 7th of February 1249, the noblemen of Warmians and Nottangians signed the peace treaty in Christburg. I may assure you that it was not famine or shortage that made these noblemen unsusceptible to the freedom of their nation. It was only our riches, privileges, and deep-rooted striving for an affluent life that gained the upper hand. Thus, my faraway posterity, at the beginning of the 13th century, the tribes, which were still free, Jotvingians, Skalvians, Curonians, Semigalians, Semigitians, Selians, as well as Latgalians, Aukštatians, and Lithuanians, had to face a new destiny, to be or not to be. Confronted with this need to choose, the dukes of the Lithuanian tribe started to organize the Union of Baltic Duchies. Your historians are quite right in assuming that such union of Baltic duchies was in operation already at the beginning of the 13th century. The names of the dukes of numerous lands failed to reach you, but even those which did can tell you a lot. You saw that the agreement of 1219 between Lithuanians and the Volhynia Duchy was approved by no less than 21 of our dukes, among them 5 supreme dukes, Žyvinbudas, Daugsprungas, Daujotas, Vilikaila, and the future king of Lithuania, Mindaugas. This agreement informs you that apart from Lithuanians, it was approved by the dukes of Samogitian and Deltuva lands. And the fact that Žyvinbudas was called the supreme duke has to persuade you that Lithuania was united already at the beginning of the 13th century. A Livonian chronicle written in verse, which already in 1236 mentions the all-Lithuanian ruler as Mindaugas, shows that even more clearly. The political situation of the mid-13th century provoked new decisions. Confronted with the danger of 2 military orders, Lithuania opened up the way for Christian statehood.